right, T. Well, welcome back to the Birds Blast with Kyle Quinn. That's right, the Birds Blast with Kyle Quinn has returned, the quintessential in Eagle pregame entertainment, back for season number 5, our 5th overall season together. Second here on the Edge of Philly Sports with your boy Matty B on the call, and of course, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Mr. Kyle Quinn. He is a producer for the midday show on 94 WIP, and it's his birthday. Kyle, welcome back. Happy birthday.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate the birthday wishes, but really, we're all celebrating today. It is the beginning of a new football season, my friend, and that's what's most important. So let's get this thing freaking rolling. I'm ready.
All right, absolutely. Kyle's right down to business. That's what I like about him. That's what happens with age, Kyle. You get your priorities straight.
Yes. Got to move a little quicker.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Kyle's right. We're here to talk some football now for the next, hopefully for you Eagle realists out there who are holding on to hope that this is a Super Bowl year. Maybe the first episode of the next 20 weeks. We'll see. But we're going to take it 1 week at a time. And this is a special week, Kyle, because seeing that it's our first week, we also, not only do we provide you the best in Eagle pregame show breakdown coverage, but we're going to break down the NFL. Every year we do this. Every year we sit down and we decipher who we think is going to be first and last in each division, each conference. We pick our wild card teams. We pick our championship game opponents, Super Bowl opponents, and Super Bowl winner. And for those who were playing at home last year, because I was and I kept stats, let's just review it real quick. Uh-oh. Kyle Quinn guessed 5 out of 29 correct responses in our little exercise last year, Kyle. And you finished with a hefty 17%, man. Me, on the other hand, your boy, 13 for 29, 45% accurate, to include picking the Super Bowl matchup and Super Bowl champion correctly. Kyle, how do you feel about being taken to school by a real Eagles fan here?
It was an impressive showing by you, Matt, but it was also a weird season in the NFL. So it was like perfectly suited for a guy like you and his weird football takes. But me, I'm looking for a bounce back, much like our Philadelphia Eagles this year. So
yes, and so with that being said, let's get that in the garbage because that is not even relevant anymore. But so how it's going to go tonight, everybody, is we're going to break the NFL down. We're going to transition and we're going to talk Eagles. But I have to, before we get into the NFL thing, Kyle, I gotta ask you a question right off the bat. We already mentioned like 24 hours away from the start of this season, and I can't believe that it's already here. Longest off season in all professional sports, and it sucks. And I know a lot of people have issues with my takes on the Eagles. You don't become the most hated person on EOP overnight. You work on that for years, and I've achieved that, and I'm very proud of it. But I stand close to my convictions. And Kyle, you have softened over the years. Now, last year being the year that it was and what happened, you were breaking down at the end too. You started doubting a lot of things, rightfully so, because it was garbage what they were producing. Mm-hmm. The offseason has come and gone. Some changes have been made. But Kyle, generally speaking, have the right changes been made, in your opinion, heading into the season?
So I guess it depends on what you think the goal is and should be for this team. If you're of the Super Bowl and Super Bowl or bust mindset, then I think that remains to be seen. It's been a long off season and a lot has happened. And I admittedly have a little bit of skepticism about some of the things that happened over the course of the offseason. But if you're just looking at have the Eagles improved and kept their window open, I believe that they did do that. I'm confident that they'll be better than last year after what they did in the offseason, but I'm not 100% certain that they're, the force to be reckoned with in the NFC that I was certain they were just a couple of years ago.
And that I think that's the biggest sticking point for a lot of people, me included, Kyle, because against popular opinion, I actually want this team to succeed. I don't want my narrative to be driven home. I don't want to be right. I really don't. And I'm being honest. I'm not sticking this thing up here. I really want them to succeed. But Kyle, based on what we've seen, based on what we've witnessed, and the evidence that's in front of us right now, heading into this season, I mean, it's got to be hard for even the biggest homer in the world to think this is a Super Bowl year.
Well, so I agree. And I mean, just the way that the NFC is, I think that they'll definitely be a contender. I mean, we'll see how it all plays out. I think they're the type of team that is going to probably get better as the year goes on. They have 2 new coordinators in place and a lot of young guys that I think need to sort of learn how to become pros. So they might get off to a little bit of a rocky start, and things might, people are probably going to be at each other's necks. We know how the city is and their fan base. You and I will probably be at each other's necks. But then by the end of the season, I think they will be viewed as a team that can contend, and I think they'll be viewed as a team that has a bit of a window. Like I'm not of the mindset that this year's Super Bowl or bust. Like if they don't win the Super Bowl, blow it all up. I actually think their best chance to win might end up being next year when they have the continuity with coordinators and able to spend a little bit more money to shore up some things in the offseason. I would say the biggest concern that I have, at least in terms of, teams from Eagles past that may be confident, is both the lines. I mean, the Eagles are typically a team that builds in the trenches. They seem to be a little bit thin on the offensive line and a lot of uncertainty on the defensive line. But again, those are sort of areas where they have young guys, and I think those young guys will start to come into their own as the season goes on.
Okay, and we're going to get into my takes here, obviously, momentarily, but we got to turn our attention now to our NFL breakdown. This is where we go conference by conference, division by division, not team by team, but first place, last place. We're going to start, as we always do, in the American Football Conference in the Eastern Division. Last year, the East was really was kind of up and down between 2 teams all season, Buffalo and Miami. Buffalo won it there at the end. Miami fell a little bit snake bitten. You had the Patriots kind of deciding that life was over and they're moving on from everybody. Belichick is out. Their quarterback is out, Mac Jones, he lasted about 2 years longer than he's supposed to have. And you got the New York Jets, who season went up in flames like on the 4th play of the year when they lost Aaron Rodgers with an ACL. I don't necessarily know that the landscape in the AFC East has changed that much, Kyle. I know Stephon Diggs is gone. He's out of Buffalo. Aaron Rodgers is back. And the Jets, another year of high drafting. Perhaps now this is the year that everybody can think that this is the year. We've been saying that your loyalty to the San Diego or Los Angeles Chargers is about tempered as my loyalty to the Jets turning things around. But Kyle, AFC East wise, what do you think? We'll start with, who do you think is coming in last?
So I don't think there's any question that the basement dweller of that division and probably the entire NFL is going to be the New England Patriots. And I think they approached this offseason and this season knowing that. I mean, they traded Matthew Judon, who's one of their best defensive players, to the Falcons. Like you said, got rid of Bill Belichick. They got a new quarterback in there who they named Jacoby Brissett the starter for week 1, right? So they're really not trying to win. Yeah. And they're not even really necessarily trying to develop the quarterback yet. So they're probably, like 3, 4 years, 5 years away. Who knows with them? We'll see how quickly they can develop and see how well they draft. But I think there's zero question that the New England Patriots are going to finish last in that division.
Well, Mac Jones is in Jacksonville. Maybe Doug Peterson can turn him around. I don't know. We'll see what that's all about. Sitting behind Trevor Lawrence, why not? But all right, Kyle, let's turn our attention to the top of that division. Mm-hmm. Is this a 2-team race between Miami and Buffalo yet again? You got to wonder that people got to be getting a little bit frustrated in Buffalo. They've been this type of team now for the last, going on 4 years now. Yeah. Is the window of winning closing on the Buffalo Bills? Can the Miami Dolphins supplant them finally? And where do the New York Jets fit in all this in the top of that division?
So I don't think it's as strong of a division as it was last season, even with the Jets probably, they're probably going to be better if Aaron Rodgers stays healthy just because they're going to have a quarterback that's not Zach Wilson. I think that's an obvious upgrade. Now, how much of one, I don't know. I will say I still think it's Buffalo's division to lose, even with the loss of Stephon Diggs. I do like Keon Coleman, the guy they drafted.
Yep.
And Josh Allen just quite simply is the best quarterback in that division. I actually think the Dolphins, while they might not miss the playoffs, I think we could see them take a little bit of a step back because they were viewed as like one of the juggernauts, at least until they coughed up the division at the end of the season. But they were dropping 70 on people. I'm not so sure that they're going to be that team again. But I don't necessarily think the Bills are going to win it with like 13, 14 games. I think probably the winner of that division is going to end up with 11, maybe 12 at most wins. But I still think it's Buffalo's to lose.
So, Kyle, you're going to go with Buffalo in first, New England in last. Okay, I'm going to go with
Buffalo first, New England last. Yep.
Yeah, I agree with the New England take. It's going to be another generation before the Patriots figure it out. But I don't agree with Buffalo. I think it's the Jets. Again, I'm gonna die on this hill. I'm telling you, Aaron Rodgers is a whole other thing when it comes to quarterback play. I think it all obviously centers around him. And that defense is really good. I know they're dealing with some problems with some misreading the room, I guess, on the Reddick thing, but whatever. They still have enough younger talent on that team. I would take the Jets defense over the Eagle defense right now in a heartbeat. If we had the Jet defense, we're winning a Super Bowl this year. We don't. But I really think that Aaron Rodgers does pull it together this year for the Jets. And I'm going to go with the sleeper here. I'm going to take the Jets to finish first, and then, of course, New England to finish last.
Okay. I mean, look, I'm just a little bit skeptical that Aaron Rodgers, all of a sudden, after a few years of not playing or whatever, that he's, and especially coming off the Achilles, that he's just going to come back and be the MVP Aaron Rodgers that he was in the past. But, I mean, that's sort of what the Jets expected last year. We'll see if they can put it all together this year.
And Daniel Barry says, "Hey, oh, by the way, I got to backtrack. Remind everybody on this network that all these shows here are brought to you by the good folks over at Dolan's, Philly Sports Trips, Sherry's Tickets, and of course, I'm forgetting one, Cherry Injury Law. Sorry about that, guys. I had to go back. But again, being the most hated member of the EOP on-air personality staff, right. I get away with a lot of stuff.
And it's hated by the sponsors too.
No, they love me actually. The sponsors actually love me, man. I get fan mail from Dave Cherry all the time.
Very good.
All right, AFC North, Kyle. This was a division that got me kind of perplexed last year. Obviously, Cincinnati was a mess when it came to injuries. Joe Burrow and T. Higgins both dealt with nagging. Well, T. Higgins with that rib injury back in like week 1 never quite got over that thing all season long. Then Joe Burrow just kind of broke down as we moved through the season, went out a couple times and finally was gone for the season. They have some off the field issues in this offseason between Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. There's a lot of turmoil in Cincinnati, but there's a lot of talent. Of course, then you got the Baltimore Ravens who goddamn Lamar Jackson can't win in the playoffs, and it's a shame because they've added Derrick Henry. They're just a really good team. Cleveland came out of nowhere with Joe Flacco leading the way, and then of course Pittsburgh is Pittsburghing along. Really kind of an up and air type division, Kyle. Where do you see this? We'll go with the first place team first.
So I think the Ravens are going to be a very good team. Lamar Jackson won the MVP last year, but didn't exactly light the world on fire. A little bit skeptical about the Derrick Henry edition, whether he still has anything left in the tank. I'm just looking at how the Bengals played last year without Joe Burrow and with Jake Browning in at quarterback, and the fact that Joe Burrow is now going to be back. I think it's Cincinnati's division to lose this time, and Joe Burrow is going to make a big run at this thing.
So we got the Bengals finishing first.
Yep.
All right. And what about last place, Kyle?
So this might surprise you a little bit. I think the Browns have serious dumpster fire potential. I'm not sold that Deshaun Watson is the Deshaun Watson that we saw 4 or 5 years ago. I think he just might be cooked. I don't know. There's just something weird going on with the Cleveland Browns. And you always see that the Steelers, whether they stink or not, or you think they stink, they always manage to have a winning record. Now, I'm not sure they'll be able to do that again with the direct that they have at quarterback this year, but I still picture them winning 7, 8 games. Whereas I think the Browns might possibly have the lowest floor of any team in that division. So I'm going to take a swing and go with the Browns as last place.
When you think about professional football, obviously, with the Hall of Fame being in Canton and Cleveland right there, that's like Mecca when it comes to pro football. And boy, man, you're right. They just cannot figure it out at all in Cleveland, man. They really can't. I'm going to go with Cincinnati as well, finishing first in this division. I just think they're just way too talented with everybody healthy. Yeah, granted, they may not be on the same page personally, but we have our own problems with that here in this town. But at the end of the day, that doesn't matter. They're just a better football team. I'm going to go with Cincinnati. And you're right. I'm not going with Cleveland, but I am going with that dreck of a quarterback situation in Pittsburgh. And this is the year that Tomlin finishes under 500. There's no way anyone's going to try to sell me on the combination of Russell Wilson and Fields winning anything at all. It's just a mess down in Pittsburgh. They may be playing for their next quarterback of the future next season.
It's possible. I mean, the Steelers are just one of those teams that never really give up or throw in the towel and don't try to win. So even if they do stink, I could still see them at the end of the season scraping together a few wins that keep them out of the conversation for the top quarterback in the draft.
Yeah, no, you're right, and it would be the Mike Tomlin way because
Yep.
yeah, I'm going to finish over 500, come hell or high water. All right, AFC South. This is the I don't know what it's up with the Southern divisions in both conferences. They stink, and it's a merry-go-round every year. But out of nowhere last year, like the year before, out of nowhere was the Jaguars. Out of nowhere last year was the Texans, leading the way with the resurgence of C.J. Stroud. And by the way, thank you, C.J. Stroud. You saved my fantasy football season last year. I picked you. I carried 3 quarterbacks last season, and I needed all 3 of them. I didn't make it into the championship round, but you saved me from having just a dreadful year because I was beset with injury. But Houston was your first place finisher, and then the Tennessee Titans, who for a while there it looked like they were about to break through, but that wasn't to be. They're cellar dwellers. Jacksonville, is Doug Peterson going to figure it out? Or more importantly, is Trevor Lawrence going to figure it out? And our boy, Mr. Steichen down there in Indianapolis, who I like Anthony Richardson. I think he's a good quarterback. He's got a little bit of RG3 vibes to him right now. He plays really reckless. If he can figure that out, don't sleep on the Colts, Kyle. We'll start with the AFC South last place team.
So I'm not going to go crazy bold here. I could see the Jags having a tough season again. I'm just not certain about pretty much anybody on that team in Jacksonville. But I think the Tennessee Titans are the worst roster in that division. And I don't necessarily see anything that gives me the idea that they're going to, sort of be able to claw their way out of that. I mean, unless Will Levis takes a jump. Will Levis takes a jump. I don't see that happening for Tennessee. So I think Tennessee's probably going to remain in last place this season.
And who do we think is going to finish in first?
So I'm going to go bold here again. I think this is a 2-team race in this division, and I will just, for the sake of the show here and maybe having a different answer than you, I'm also high on Anthony Richardson, and I think the second year with Shane Steichen in that offense is going to be a thing to behold there. So I'm going to say that the Colts take a big step up and they win that division and steal it from the Texans.
Yeah, again, going back to my fantasy football thing from last year, my 3 quarterbacks to start the season were Joe Burrow, Anthony Richardson, and C.J. Stroud. They were my 3. I lost 2 of them along the way, and then C.J. Stroud, but I ended up picking up Richardson in the 11th round last year's draft because, there was some skepticism about him, but he's electric when he's on the field, but Kyle, he plays really reckless.
Yep.
And they got to figure that out down there, or again, it's a lot of RG3 vibes.
Oh, yeah. And I think I saw something. Anthony Richardson's only started 16 games since high school, both in college and pro, or 17 games. So, yeah. I mean, so, he's a super wild card, but man, when he's healthy, he's a monster.
He is. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stay with the status quo. With that fact being said about Anthony Richardson, I'm not sold on the fact that he can stay upright all season long. So give me the reigning Southern champs, the Texans. I really think what DeMeco Ryans and company are doing down there, they're gonna get that franchise back on the map or on the map. So I'm gonna go ahead with them repeating, and then you're right about the assessment of the Titans. They're just out there in the middle of the ocean somewhere, and I don't know. They'd have no direction. They don't know where they're going, and it's going to get worse before it gets better for Tennessee.
Yep. Yeah, I just don't think they have the roster to be able to compete with the 2 top teams in the division. I mean, I'm not certain about the Jags. I just think I'm a little more certain that the Titans are not going to be good.
Yeah, and that's really all it's all going to take to keep Jacksonville Jaguars out of last place. All right, AFC West, and tomorrow night, the dawn of the Kansas City Chief dynasty will officially begin as the 2-time defending Super Bowl champions will host the Ravens. You, as I mentioned, you have had this obsession with the Chargers over the last few years, and they have not been able to get out of their way at all. And we're picking the corpse of the Chargers. First, they brought their old offensive coordinator over here, make him a head coach. Now we're bringing the other offense. So listen, maybe there's something to your thing here, but AFC West, give me your last place team. Oh, and then we talk about the Broncos and the Raiders.
Yep. One of these days, I will be right about the Chargers. I'm not going to pick them to win the division. I think last place is pretty clearly the Las Vegas Raiders. I mean, you can make an argument for Denver. I just think they have a better head coach, and they actually have a quarterback that he identified as his guy. I don't know about Bo Nix, but I know that I don't love the quarterback combo or whatever that they got going on down there in Las Vegas. So I'm going to pick the Raiders to finish in last. I think the Broncos probably squeak by with, maybe 6-7 wins this season, but the Raiders are probably going to be down in the basement.
I think Bo Nix is actually going to be very good. He's going to have to go through his lumps, and he'll middle his way through his first season. But they can start bringing in a little bit more, build some weapons around him going forward. I think Denver finally found their quarterback. That's my point here with Bo Nix.
They're probably just another year or so away from competing.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, of course, first place. Is there anybody that's going to kick the Kansas City Chiefs out of first place?
So I don't think that the Chargers are going to take the division from the Chiefs. I'm laying it down on the line with the Chargers every year. I'm done betting against the Kansas City Chiefs in any way, shape, or form. And I'm tired of betting against Patrick Mahomes, and I'm tired of betting against Andy Reid because they make me look like an ass every single time I do it. So I think the smart money is just to bet on the Kansas City Chiefs to win that division again.
Yeah, they did not have a Herculean regular season, but it didn't matter. When you get them into the playoffs, it's a whole other animal. And Pat Mahomes, I mean, I'm not saying am I the biggest Jalen Hurts guy and fan in the world? Absolutely not. Do I think there's quarterbacks that are a lot better than him? Absolutely. Do I think there's quarterbacks that are worse than him? Absolutely. But there's something about Pat Mahomes is a different level, a different stratosphere. I think when it's all said and done with, he will be the greatest quarterback ever. I really do.
And it'll be fun debates just because he did cross paths with Brady at the end of Brady's career, and Brady beat him both in the AFC Championship and in the Super Bowl head-to-head. So those debates, they're going to be there, but they're going to be fun.
Yeah, they are going to be fun, but I think it's going to come down to the hardware, and I know Brady's got 7, and Mahomes is working his way up that way. I think Mahomes is going to get more, honestly. Yeah. I don't see anybody stopping him. I agree with your assessment of the Chiefs. They are definitely the first-place team in that division. But I'm going to go ahead with Denver, even though I said that I think Bo Nix is their guy. I just don't think Denver has much of anything else offensively. And then Pat Surtain on defense. Yeah, that's great and all. He might actually get moved. I know they just signed him to an extension, but I would not be surprised if it does fall apart for Denver by Halloween that Pat Surtain is on the move at the trading deadline. Again, call me Kismet here, but I'm going to go ahead with Denver.
I mean, the Pat Surtain thing's possible. Like, Sean Payton didn't draft him. He could be trying to mold the team more into his image. And, we'll see what happens with them by the trade deadline or by next offseason. But, I could definitely see a world where that happens.
Absolutely. All right, so we finished our divisions. Now it's time to pick our 3 AFC wildcards. Kyle, the honor is yours.
So I don't think the Baltimore Ravens are going to miss the playoffs. I have them as the top wildcard team. I have the Texans as the second wild card team. And damn it, Matt, I'm doing it again, baby. Justin Herbert has a head coach. They're going to stay healthy this time. The Chargers squeak in as the final seed in the AFC playoffs.
Oh, wow. No surprise there. I'm going with Miami as the top wild card. I'm going with Buffalo as the second one. And I'm going Baltimore as my third. I don't have the Chargers. I have the AFC East, the class act of that conference, or the most competition in that conference. So I say they send 3 total to the playoffs, 2 wild cards, and of course the division champ. And then I got Baltimore getting in as well as the wild card. All right, Kyle, your AFC championship game matchup, go.
It's going to be the Chiefs, and it's going to be Joe Burrow, who exacts his revenge once again on Patrick Mahomes in Arrowhead Stadium.
So Cincinnati's moving on to Super Bowl 59?
I think they are.
And Joe Burrow's going to go down to New Orleans. That has a little drama to it. You're right. He's returning back to the Bayou.
That's right, baby. Joe Burrow back in Louisiana.
All right. That's going to be a good storyline. All right, Kyle. I have Kansas City versus the Jets. That's right. I got the New York Jets making the run to the championship game. Shocking the world, but they will not shock the world that much. Kansas City will defeat them. And Kansas City will return to the Super Bowl to try to win for the 3rd straight time.
Yeah, I think I'm still sort of throwing mud at the walls here, trying to get Kansas City to not be the Super Bowl champion. And, it'll probably make me look like an idiot yet again. But if there's one man that can beat them, we've seen Joe Burrow go down to Arrowhead and do it. So,
yep. I don't think Josh Allen's up to the task. And we've seen Lamar Jackson not be up to the task. So you're right. There's only one left. And maybe that's the Achilles heel. Maybe that's Pat Mahomes' Achilles heel is the Bengals, man. And Joe Burrow more specifically.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's switch over now to the National Football Conference. We're going to start out there in the NFC West. In a division, and we argued about this over the season. I don't identify the 49ers as a rival to the Eagles. I don't think you can have a rival where you only play them once every 3 or 4 seasons. I understand why people think they're rivals, but I don't buy into that. But the 49ers do own that division. The Rams, Seahawks, and then the lowly Cardinals, who had their Super Bowl last year when they came to Philadelphia and destroyed. They destroyed the Eagles at the end of the season with John
destroyed our
Gannon.
willpower.
They did.
All of our will that
They
we had
took
left.
it all away. Yes,
John
there was
Gannon.
nothing left after that game. So let's talk about let's go last place in the NFC West, Kyle. Is anybody going to beat out the Arizona Cardinals in that division?
My answer here might surprise you. I think Seattle is due for a really, really bad season. And as much as it pains me to say it, I think Jonathan Gannon's doing a pretty good job in Arizona. They came on a little bit at the end of the year, and they're going to have Kyler Murray maybe fully healthy for the whole season. If they do, I think they will edge out the Seattle Seahawks, and the Seahawks will finish in last. I'm done with the Geno Smith thing. I mean, it was cute for a year or two. Over it. Done. Geno Smith is going to finish last.
And they did add Marvin Harrison Jr. in the draft, right?
Yep.
Arizona? Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. So you're right. They gave Kyler Murray some weapons. All right, first place, is there anybody? A lot of scuttlebutt around the water cooler about the Rams maybe taking down the 49ers. What's your take on the first place of the NFC West?
It's hard for me to see the Rams dethroning the Niners. I mean, I think the Rams are going to fight probably pretty deep into the season for that division. But they did lose Aaron Donald, who's the best defensive player in the league. That's a tough one to recover from. And the Niners just sort of remind me of, the Braves in baseball are just kind of always up there. And they even when they have they'll have a down season every once in a while, but they always find themselves toward the top. And they're one of those weird teams that break the trend of in the NFL of going to a Super Bowl and then falling apart the next year. Like they're always in the NFC Championship or deep into the playoffs. So I think I'm just going to bet on the Niners again to win that division.
Yeah, that's a good bet. I'm going with the I'm saying the Cardinals are still going to finish in last place. And, of course, I got the 49ers winning that division as well. NFC South, again, we kind of gave the disclaimer when we talked about the AFC South because here we go again with another mind-blowingly bad division with just teams that could literally everybody could be in first or last. It really doesn't matter. Tampa Bay is your defending NFC South champions. New Orleans, Atlanta, and the lowly Carolina Panthers. Kyle, you can make your choice. What do you want to pick, the first place or last place team? Go ahead. It's your honor. You take it.
God, that's such a terrible division. I just am so anti Bryce Young. I think that's one of the worst first overall picks in recent memory. And I think the Panthers are going to pay for that yet again. They just don't have a good enough team. Really didn't give him anything that I think is there to look at. So I'm going to go with the Panthers finishing last in that division again.
Okay, and I actually got Atlanta finishing last, honestly.
Wow.
I think they're going to actually make I think Bryce Young's going to surprise a few people this year. I'm betting on him. I had an auto-picked fantasy draft, and I ended up with really no good quarterbacks, so I picked up Bryce Young on the waiver wire, so I'm betting on him to have a good season. Yeah. So I'm going to go with Atlanta. And I just think there's a lot of, the Kirk Cousins effect down there. Again, Kirk Cousins was he about 55 years old? He's older than me. He's been, he's got to have some weapons around him. Bijan's hurt start season. I'm just not. I don't know much about the Falcons other than what they've shown, and that's nothing. And then the Penix thing at the draft, and just the confusion with all that. I think there's too much drama in Atlanta, so I'm going to go ahead with the Falcons. Who do you got first?
So I think Atlanta finishes first. I think it's probably going to be between them and the Bucs. I mean, you can say what you want about Kirk Cousins. The guy puts up numbers in the regular season, and they did have a pretty good defense at the end of last year. So I think that's going to be Atlanta's division to lose. I'm not sure I'd necessarily buy the Baker Mayfield hype. Definitely don't buy into the Saints, and I definitely don't buy into the Panthers. I just think the Falcons are probably the best team in that division. So I'll go with Atlanta. Okay,
and I'm going to go with Tampa because, to be honest with you, it doesn't matter because any one of these teams could be last place or any one of these teams could be first. It doesn't matter to me. So I'm going to go ahead with Tampa, because it's the best. They won last year, so I'm going to go with them.
All right. Somebody has to win it.
Yeah. NFC North, power shift in this division last year. The age of the Lions, which still is weird for me to find after 35, 40 years, and Barry Sanders and Megatron and all these players that have come and gone, they finally turned it around under the stewardship of Jared Goff, of all people. They are the class. A lot of people, when they talk NFC power, they talk 49ers, Lions, and then maybe Eagles. They put a foothold on that division. They put a chokehold on it. The Packers, who were dead in the water until Thanksgiving, turned it around and made a run at the end. And then you got the lowly Chicago Bears, who potentially might have figured out their quarterback problem for the first time since Jim McMahon, for God's sakes. And then you got the Minnesota Vikings, who now are down their first round pick. McCarthy's out for the year. What do you got out of the NFC North? Let's go to first place first.
So I agree with you that a lot of people are, they put the Lions up there. I also think too many people act like the Green Bay Packers are this powerhouse in the NFC, and that they just skip over the line sometimes when they talk about the top teams, and they go right to Green Bay. I mean, I get it. They look good at the end of the year, and they went into Dallas and beat the Cowboys. But, they had a good half of the season. I don't think they upgraded the defense, massively, and they have a college defensive coordinator coming up. So I think the Packers might just be a year away from really contending. I think they need to get Jordan Love a true weapon on that offense that's not an aging running back and not, like a mid-wide receiver like a Christian Watson or a Jaden Reed. So I think this is still going to be the Lions' division to lose. We can laugh at the Lions all we want, but I think that they're sort of gotten out of that just being like a joke of an organization thing. They've drafted really well, and they finally got themselves into an NFC championship game last year. I think they're going to continue that role, and I think the Lions are going to win the division again.
We joked on this very program about the chop and kneecap thing those years ago with Dan Campbell, but you're right. I think people are eating some crow with that. He seems to be players, they run through brick walls for their head coach, and there's a lot to be said for that. So, last place?
I'm going to go with the Vikings. I mean, we don't know necessarily if the Bears really did figure out the quarterback position. I like Caleb Williams. We'll see. What we do know is that the Vikings did not. I mean, even if they did, he's not playing this year. They have Sam Darnold going out there, and they really just don't feel like a team that's going into this season trying to win that much. So I think the Vikings are going to finish last.
And, of course, I'm going to go ahead with Detroit as well, finishing first in that division. And I am going to go with the Bears because I think Caleb Williams might be the answer. I think he's closest to an answer they've had since they've had some bad quarterbacks. They just cannot figure out the quarterback, but I think they might be on the right path here. But I think it's a matter of having him grow into that role as well as have the team grow around him into that role. So I'm going to say Chicago finishes last place, but that's probably they may pull themselves out of last place starting next year. But yeah, Detroit's definitely the class act of that division, and Chicago.
Yep. And I think Chicago's one of those teams that probably gets better as the season goes on.
Yeah, absolutely. If everybody can stay healthy. All right, Kyle, this is what everybody wants to hear. NFC East. No repeat division champions since 2004 when the Philadelphia Eagles were the last team to do it. Dallas won the division last year. You can say they won it de facto by default because the Eagles stopped playing after November 30th. Whatever you want to say, but it happened. It was the best team. Did the right team win that division? No. Did the best team win that division? Yeah, they did because the Eagles fell off a cliff. It's going to be interesting. The Giants seem to be a dumpster fire, and why they would ever let the Hard Knocks people come along and film all that is beyond me. And then the Commanders, who I think are actually turning a corner with their new GM, a guy that I so wanted to come here, and once they fired that cancer, Howie Roseman, but that's not going to happen. He's not here. NFC East, we'll start with last place, Kyle. What do you think?
So I think the Giants are clearly the worst team in the division. They're another team that's not really trying to win, and I actually sort of agree with the Commanders. I think they made a good draft pick in Jaden Daniels. Now, do I think he's going to light the world on fire in year one? Maybe not. I think people are banking on him having a CJ Stroud type year. That's an outlier. Let's be honest about what CJ Stroud did last year. So I do think the Commanders might have found their guy, but it's going to take them a year. They're not going to be the last place team. I think that's probably going to end up being the Giants. They just have nobody.
And I like the Commanders head coach. I like Dan. I know Dan Quinn is kind of a throwback type of head coach, but that's a pleasant surprise, especially in this division. All right, Kyle, who's winning the divivision? Wait, let me get my pen ready.
It's not
the Cowboys. Okay.
Dude. No. I mean, I'm not doing the Cowboys this year. There's just they've had such a weird offseason with Jerry Jones, five different variations telling everybody what his version of all in means, and it seemed to change and dwindle the closer they got to the season because they're like, oh crap, we have to pay our actual players that are here, and they only paid one of those guys. So I don't know, it's going to be a weird season with Dak in a contract year, Micah Parsons in a contract year, and CeeDee Lamb not having been there. the entire offseason. And losing Tyron Smith is a big deal. So I think the Cowboys did more to get worse than they did to improve the team. I think the Eagles, it's probably going to be a little bit of a dogfight throughout the entire season. But like I said, I think the Eagles are going to come on, and I think the Eagles are going to end up taking the division by the end of the year.
And, kudos to you for Cowboys, regardless. Cowboys over the Eagles, but unfortunately, I don't have that same allegiance to the other teams in the division. I'm going to go ahead with the Giants finishing dead last. Of course, there's probably no worse team in that division, and I think it's last place by a long shot. I mean, I think they're out of it by literally Halloween. It's time to start thinking about the Giants are on the clock. That's how bad I think it's going to be in New York. And I got the Commanders winning the division, Kyle. I'm just not sold on the Eagles. Now, am I sold on the Commanders? No, but I'm not sold on the Eagles, and I will never be sold on the Cowboys. So I'm going with my default here. I'm going to pick the Commanders. I think it could be any one of the three teams between the Eagles, Commanders, and Cowboys. You're right. There's a lot of internal strife, and Jerry Jones seems to be running that team, thankfully, into the ground. I think the Eagles are what they are, and we'll get into that. And I think the Commanders are kind of just starting to inch their way up. And I'm not saying they're there yet, but if the two others continue to mess around, Commanders are going to pass them. And right now, I think that could happen this year. So I'm going to go with Washington.
Okay. I mean, look, it's not the Cowboys. I commend you for that.
Yeah, never.
But no, we're just going to be at odds about the Eagles again all season.
Yes,
it'll make for fun talk.
Yeah. I debated on whether to going over the schedule with you, but I was like, you know what? No, we're going to let the thing play out week by week. So anyway, wild card teams, Kyle. Who are your three in the NFC East?
Gets a little tougher in the NFC. I do think Green Bay ends up as a wild card. And I said all that earlier, not to necessarily hate on the Packers. I do think they're a little bit overrated, but I do view them as a playoff team in the NFC. I'm going to go with the Cowboys. They're probably going to end up, what they do is every year is they end up winning more games than you expect them to. I think they're probably going to end up doing that again and squeaking into the playoffs as the 6th seed. And then with the 7th seed, I'm going to go with the Rams. I think they have just enough on offense and a good enough offensive mind and a weak enough conference that I think they'll end up coming out as the 7th seed in the NFC.
So I got Green Bay 5, Dallas 6, and the Rams 7. Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead, and I got the Eagles as the 6 or 5. Yeah, as the 5. Again, I don't know. I really don't know where this season's headed. This season could go in any direction right now for the Eagles, and obviously we're going to find out starting Friday night. But I'm not saying they can't be a playoff team. I don't think they're a divisional winner, but I'm not saying they can't be a playoff team. So I'm going to go with the Eagles at 6 or 5. I got Green Bay at 6, and I got Dallas at 7. So there's my
3 NFC East teams.
Yeah,
the Beast is back.
Yeah. Well, no, I got Eagles, Green Bay, and Dallas.
Yeah, the Commanders is the division winner.
Right, the three NFC teams going to the playoffs.
Yep.
All right, NFC Championship matchup. Kyle Quinn, what do you got?
Oh, man. This is really tough. So I think it's probably I'll give it to the 49ers again. They're one of those teams that, like I said, just always sort of find themselves up there. It's tough for me to pick who they're going to go against. I'm not sure the Lions have necessarily another deep playoff run in them just because, for every team besides the Niners, it's hard to go deep into the playoffs in back-to-back seasons. We'll see if the Lions are built for it. I don't think they are. I'm just going to be the homer. I'm going to go with the Birds, man. Like I said, I think they come on at the end of the year. They find themselves in the NFC Championship.
So Eagles and 49ers, is it in San Francisco? Is it here at the Link?
It's going to be in San Francisco, and I believe the Niners will probably be better than the Eagles.
Okay, so you got the 49ers beating the Eagles. So you got Cincinnati and San Francisco. I got the championship game. I got San Francisco and Detroit, a rematch as well. But this time I think Detroit finds a way in and they get to the Super Bowl. So I got Kansas City and Detroit, and you got Cincinnati and the 49ers. Kyle, who is your Super Bowl 59 champion?
I think Joe Burrow is going to do it. I don't trust Brock Purdy as a Super Bowl winning quarterback. I think Joe Burrow's got the moxie. He's going to avenge his loss to the Rams a few years ago, when I do think the Bengals could have made an argument for being the better team. And I'm going with Joe Burrow riding hot off of beating Patrick Mahomes in Arrowhead, and he's going to go beat the Niners, who just can't seem to get the job done when it's all said and done.
Listen, if you go out and you beat Pat Mahomes in the AFC Championship game in Arrowhead, you better finish the deal. You better finish the deal in the Super Bowl. But I got Kansas City and Detroit, and I got not a three-peat. I got the Detroit Lions winning their first ever Super Bowl championship. They will win Super Bowl 59. You heard it here first, and that's all I'm going to say about that.
Well,
All right.
we both have a first-time Super Bowl winner in their history. So
That's a good point, and I want to work as many of those teams off that list.
Yep. Cool.
All right. All right, Kyle. That's good stuff, man. We'll keep an eye on this. I'll keep an eye on this kind of one-eyed throughout the season, and we'll talk at the end how we came to the end and who was the best team. Again, 45% was my total from last year, so we'll see how you do. All right, let's transition for what we really came here to talk about, and that is your Philadelphia Eagles. The preseason training camp has come and gone. All the hype is now over. They're about to kick it off down there in Sao Paulo over the weekend, Friday night. First and foremost, I'm not going to ask you the obligatory "what do you think about Brazil" question yet, but I do want to ask you, what do you think about Friday night football to start the season?
Look, it gets me the Eagles a couple days earlier. It's not a Friday coming off of a Sunday. The Eagles are going to get a long week out of it. I get it takes a home game away from them against an NFC opponent that they could be fighting with toward the end of the season for, a playoff spot or a top seed. So that definitely makes it tough. But look, I mean, both teams got to go travel. So there's not really an advantage necessarily for either team. I think it's fun. I mean, look, the growing the game thing and the amount of money the NFL makes doesn't matter to me. I look at it as I have Thursday night football and then I have a Friday game. And then one day in between that, and we'll have red zone. So it's a day of Eagles football earlier than it would usually be. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I hear you. If you're going to do it on a Friday, you might as well do it on the first week of the season. Yeah. It gets here earlier. Yeah, and then we have a mini bye after that, so that kind of works out as well if there's any issues. And apparently there are with injuries already on this team, so they can maybe work them out before they host Atlanta on Monday night. Which again sucks because we got to wait an extra day next week to get to the last game. So they got the second game of the week this week, and then the last game of the week, whatever. But there's more 1:00 games than the 3 we had last year, which is positive. That's it sucks so bad.
Yeah.
All right, Kyle. We got a offensive and defensive coordinator swap out for the umpteenth time under the Nick Sirianni regime. Third time, let's be honest. Nick Sirianni's back, which is boggling a lot of people's minds. And you got a lot of questions surrounding what the defense is going to look like. I think more so than what the offense is going to look like. And then, of course, your quarterback. I'm going to jump into the quarterback right off the bat. He's coming into the first year, I believe, of his extension, or this is the first year of that contract extension. He's going to kick in. Yep. And he's coming off of a regression. I don't think people gave it as much clarity last year that he was regressing. It wasn't a slump. I think he regressed. He was unable to make adjustments at the end of the season. You can blame coordinators all you want. I don't. I think the players got to play. And the Eagles apparently thought the same thing because they went rogue. And they said it, and they've admitted to that they were going against what the coaches wanted anyway. Quarterback situation, he came from a 2022 potential MVP season to what happened in 23. And I don't buy the fact that he was a front runner for MVP before the bottom fell out. He wasn't to me.
Yep.
He wasn't. What is Jalen Hurts got to do in 2024 to take that next step? Or is this what Jalen Hurts is?
No, I think he's just got to sort of let everything come to him. I am with you that the players, were not as good. They didn't live up to their potential last season. I think there's blame to go around for everybody. And we can't pretend that the coordinators weren't turds on both sides of the ball. I mean, Brian Johnson sucked at his job. Kellen Moore is an actual offensive coordinator. And the Eagles finished last season 7th in the NFL in total scoring. So you would figure that with an actual offensive coordinator that they'll be a little bit better. Now, if everybody stays healthy, there's really no excuse. Like, Jalen Hurts doesn't have to be, set the world on fire guy. He kind of just has to take what the offense gives him and get the ball to the playmakers. I think we'll see Kellen Moore move Devontae Smith around, sort of like he did with CeeDee Lamb in Dallas, to move him in the slot, get the matchups. I think Devontae is going to be that guy this year. So if Jalen's able to sort of have that all figured out, and, it might take a few weeks for him to do that, I think we'll see a closer version to the 22 Jalen Hurts than we did the 23 Jalen Hurts. Maybe not as good or the MVP guy, but good enough. I don't think the Eagles need a strong arm quarterback to get them all the way. Like, they just need sort of a game manager. Like, let's be honest, Jalen Hurts needs to be a game manager this year, and I think the offense will be just fine.
One final question about Jalen Hurts. In your opinion, can he read NFL defenses?
So I guess to what extent? Like, can you read any NFL defense like Peyton Manning could? No.
Can he? Yeah. Can he? No, maybe not. Like, no, I'm not. Let's not go there. Let's.
Yeah.
I mean, can he properly work through his progressions and properly make the right calls at the line of scrimmage? Because that's a nuance this year has come out as well. That now Jason Kelsey apparently was in charge of protections, calling out the protection. Now Jalen Hurts is going to have to call out the protection. Is Jalen Hurts capable of doing all this?
So I think he's capable. Now the real question is he capable of doing it quick enough? That might be something, again, like you mentioned, with Jason Kelsey now being gone and him claiming that he's now taken full responsibility. That might be something that has to get a little bit better over time. But the reality is we are going to find out in the first game whether anything's changed about whether they're able to pick up a blitz protection. Because if you don't think the Green Bay Packers are going to blitz him on every single play, then you're just out of your mind. So do I think he can read a defense? Yeah. We'll see just to what level and how quickly he's able to go through all his progressions. Pretty quick.
Moving down to the coaching staff, you mentioned Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio. They have two professional coordinators now, and they haven't had those since Steichen and Gannon. And, you know, in all intents and purposes, it probably will be better overall for this team as they move through the season. But let's talk about the head coach. No one can tell me really why he's still here. No one other than, you know, I hear a lot of word salad about why he's still here. But two questions about him for you. Question number one, why is he still here? And question number two, what's his job?
Well, so I think we've gone to a point where we've now underrated Nick Sirianni. And that might sound crazy to you, but the Eagles clearly if the Eagles didn't believe in Nick Sirianni, he wouldn't be here. The Eagles are not the type to sit on their hands. And, you know, they did this with Chip Kelly. They did this with Andy Reid. When they knew that it was not going well, they got rid of it. And the Eagles interviewed Kellen Moore a few years ago before they hired Nick Sirianni. So if the Eagles really wanted to, they could have fired Nick Sirianni and just hired Kellen Moore as the head coach. They didn't do that. Clearly, they think that Nick Sirianni has value to this football team. And the whole thing about Nick Sirianni doesn't do anything. He didn't really do anything since 2021 when he gave over the play calling to Shane Steichen, right? He never called the defense since then. So what's really changed about Nick Sirianni, about what's different from him from the year in 2022 when Steichen ran the entire offense and Gannon ran the entire defense, and they went all the way to the Super Bowl versus what happened last year? I think a lot of the blame for the collapse gets put on Nick Sirianni, and like I said, everybody gets some of the blame. But it's not like Sirianni was stubborn, right? He fired the defensive coordinator, albeit that didn't work, but it's not like he didn't try anything. At a certain point, you just kind of got to throw your hands up and be like, there's nothing he could have done. So I think Sirianni's kind of gotten to a point where he's underrated, and we're going to see his value as a game day head coach this season. Because if you remember, in 22, we praised him a lot for his decision-making on fourth down. Some of the in-game, quick challenge decisions that he had to make. Those are things that the coach has to do. And if they end up having a good season again with a third set of coordinators, and if they make the playoffs again, if that'll be every year in Nick Sirianni's tenure as an Eagles coach, then I think we're just going to kind of have to accept that that's what he is. And he's, in my opinion, because I've heard this comparison go around a lot, I think he's closer to a Harbaugh. I'm not saying he's a Harbaugh, but I think he's closer to a Harbaugh than he is a Jason Garrett, where he just claps on the sidelines and does literally nothing. So I do think we've gotten to the point where it's gone a little bit overboard on Nick Sirianni, and I think he's going to prove a lot of people wrong this year.
I think Nick Sirianni is the worst coach in Eagles history.
Oh,
I absolutely do. And you can tell me all about the playoffs and going to the Super Bowl, but at the end of the day, he lost all of that. So he was brought here, I thought, because he was an offensive guru. Wasn't that what we were told when they hired him? That he's going to come in here and revolutionize the offense and make it.
No, I don't think they were told
that's what they said. That's what they said. And what he did not do last year, and your comment about what is a head coach supposed to do. He's accountable for that team, good, bad, or indifferent. That's whatever happens to that team, it's his responsibility. If it's good, bad, or whatever. Okay. He didn't make any adjustments at all throughout the season, especially when the wheels were coming off. It was the same thing week after week after week after week. The fans saw it. I saw it. Everybody saw it. It was the same thing. That Tampa game in the playoffs, Kyle, I remember we talked about it. Those last two games, the Giants and the Tampa game, were just disgrace, just horrible. it was unwatchable. I'd rather them not even play the damn games. That's how bad it was. That's the head coach's responsibility. Whether the players quit on him, whatever, then bench all their asses and send somebody else out there to play. Nick Sirianni allowed things to unravel and had no answers. For whatever reason that was, I don't know that reason or that answer. I don't know why Nick Sirianni's here. I think he's here because Howie doesn't want to be labeled as that guy who made the wrong hire as a head coach. Honestly, that's what I think. I think this thing is going down the tubes, and I think Sirianni's driving it right down.
So you said that he gets all the credit, good, bad, or indifferent.
Absolutely.
He's getting all the blame for last year. If you want to hold him accountable for how last season went, go ahead.
Absolutely.
But then you also have to give him credit in the same breath for taking the team to the playoffs every year and taking them to the Super Bowl in his second year. So it feels
what
like
credit is that, Kyle? Credit going to the play. They lost. LOST.
Okay.
They lost in the playoffs and they lost in the Super Bowl. There's no credit there.
Yes, there is.
No, there's not.
The Super Bowl is an accomplishment. Yes, it is, Matt. Because
no, it's not. If they lost, they lost.
Matt, hold on. Because you've seen a lot more Eagles football than me. You have seen way worse coaches than Nick Sirianni. You've seen coaches that go 3-13, couldn't even like sniff the postseason, right? Like Nick Sirianni, there's something to be said for what, like, if you're going to give him all the credit or all the blame for what happened at the end of last year, then you have to also give him credit for how far he's gotten the team in his first 3 years. You just do, or else you're talking out of both sides of your mouth.
But what I guess maybe I'm having a problem with is understanding your definition of what I'm supposed to give credit for. I give credit for something that turns out, if they would have won the Super Bowl, absolutely, you got the credit. Like I've given Howie Roseman credit for the Super Bowl, absolutely give it to him. I'm not giving credit for losing, because at the end of the day, that's what they did. They lost. I got it. They went to the playoffs.
Matt, there's a difference. There's a difference between losing and in the last game of the season. Like the Giants are a losing team, right? It's hard to get to a Super Bowl. It's harder to win it, yes. But you have to give them credit for the accomplishment of going to a Super Bowl, because there are coaches in the NFL who would absolutely kill to have that on their resume.
Didn't we discuss this about, what was it, Polian, about the GM?
Yeah, and he's one of the best general managers of all time. You don't quite understand how difficult it is to get a team to that level. You just can't dismiss that.
I can dismiss it, and I will, because I don't agree with my bar set a little higher, I guess, than everybody else's.
Well, then
bar.
you're talking out of both sides of your mouth, because
I'm not talking out of both sides of my mouth.
No credit for when he wins. So
I'm not saying. Listen, they won games. They got to the playoffs. They got to a Super Bowl. But where did it end? It ended in what? Defeat.
Okay, but is he? So you're saying you don't have a scale other than you win the Super Bowl or you don't. So do you think Nick Sirianni is like Brian Dable level of a head coach?
He's trending in that direction. If he doesn't win a Super Bowl,
no, because there's levels to this thing, Matt.
There's not levels.
Yes, there are, Matt. There are great coaches, there are good coaches, and there are piss poor coaches. Nick Sirianni, I don't know if he's a great coach, but he's definitely not a piss poor coach.
Is Belichick a great coach? Yes or no?
Of course he is.
Why?
Matt, well, I think it's
why.
He's probably Matt. Well, Matt, hold on. No,
why?
No, Matt, because you're talking. Is Joe Burrow a great quarterback?
He's a good quarterback.
Okay. So
there's one great quarterback in the NFL right now. It's Pat Mahomes.
It was Dan Marino a great quarterback?
He's a very good quarterback. He didn't win a Super Bowl.
Come on. No, see, all right.
He didn't win a Super Bowl. You were asking my question. I'm going to give you the answer. He never won a Super Bowl.
Well, your answer stinks. So let's just move on.
All right, my answer's stinking, whatever, but that's my opinion. But Kyle, I get what you're saying. I do. But I'm not going to sit here and waste my time making excuses for why we're not winning versus to try to find out how we can win. And right now, barring now what could go wrong, or what could not go wrong, but what could go right, is that maybe this is his role. This is what he's suited for. He's that middle guy, whatever that role is going to be for him. And they have two other people in charge of calling the offense and the defense. And maybe that's what we ride to the Super Bowl. And maybe that's how we got to the Super Bowl in 22, because we allowed the offensive coordinator to be the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator to be the defensive coordinator. Then they went out, and I don't know who was responsible for hiring Johnson and Desai. No one can tell me that, but I'm going to give that to Howie, because that's his job. That was wrong. And now we got two professional coordinators, and we're going to find out. You might have something there, Kyle, but at the end of the day, when things do go wrong and when things go sideways, it's the head coach that is the one who pulls them out of it. And Nick Sirianni didn't pull nobody out of it last year.
Well, I mean, okay, but look, they probably picked the best captain in the world to drive the Titanic. He hit an iceberg. There was nothing he could do. He's not a bad captain. All of a sudden, he just ran into an iceberg.
Terrible captain.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Kyle. Now, last thing is personnel. Right, we're going to talk about that. Offense stacked. I'll give you that. They are one of the probably the most
Yep.
weapon-laden teams in the NFL. So, Saquon Barkley. Now Dotson joins the fray. Do have some questions along the offensive line. Of course, replacing a player like Jason Kelce is not going to happen overnight, and Cam Jurgens may eventually round into that form. I asked you this question way back when Jason Kelce first announced his retirement. Are the Eagle fans going to be patient with Cam Jurgens? Are they going to allow him to grow, or are we going to accept a seamless transition from Cam Jurgens or Jason Kelce to Cam Jurgens?
So you could have just cut off the sentence that are Eagles fans going to be patient? No, they're not. I mean, whether they should be is probably another story. I mean, yeah, because he's assuming an entirely new role and he's going to be filling in the shoes of a Hall of Fame caliber player left at the top of his game. But no, they're not going to be patient. No, they're not.
Ken James here. I guess he's a Packer fan. I don't know, it's smiling, laughing, and all that. Well,
Screw you, Ken.
Welcome to a Philadelphia Eagles pregame show there, man. This is what we do. Yeah, I agree. But, what is what is the level? Like, what do you see? What's acceptable for you for Cam Jurgens in year one, replacing Jason Kelce?
It's hard to quantify when you're a center, right? Because you don't really have counting stats. We're going to know, like, if Cam Jurgens is getting blown up or if he looks too small, then we're probably going to know right away if he's not really doing his job. And if the blitz pickup's a problem again, we're all going to be looking at Jalen Hurts, but Cam Jurgens is probably going to share some of the blame in that too. So it's going to be a touch and feel thing, and we're probably going to have to use the eye test a lot. But I think that really just all is kind of up in the air until we see it.
Then two more questions, personnel related, and we'll dive into the Packers. Second question about the personnel. Fletcher Cox also joined Jason Kelce in retirement, leaving a vacuum of veteran leadership on this team. And again, I go back to last season when things went sideways and Jason Kelce was part of this and nothing changed. So that's a little concerning. But now that he's gone and Fletcher Cox are gone, Jalen Hurts is obviously being pinpointed to be that next, to step up to be that next voice. Can Jalen Hurts do that, Kyle Quinn? Does he have that ability? Is he a leader? Is he the type of leader that can lead the Philadelphia Eagles?
Well, I mean, at one point he was viewed as that guy, and clearly we, from all the reporting that we got this offseason, the Eagles got in his ear about being that leader, stepping into that role. So it's kind of, push is coming to shove here this season, and I don't know how many other truly vocal leaders that they have on the team at this point. So he kind of has to, or they're going to sink.
Yeah, I agree. And then my final question about the personnel is, the biggest story for me this season is going to be what the defense can do. And we got reports now that Devin White has been shut down, did not make the trip, was injured, ankle injury. But now we're hearing that he's not going because essentially either he's out on the Eagles or the Eagles are out on him. Somewhere along the line, something didn't work or something hasn't worked, and he kind of fell on the depth chart. Kobe Dean kind of took over. You got reports now Isaiah Rodgers is hurt. He won't play, out with a hand injury. So Keely Ringo is probably going to step into the breach. You got Quinn Mitchell, who's slotted as a nickelback, not slotted as the other side of Darius Slay to start the season, which I find it kind of weird that he didn't come right in to start automatically. Defense is the question this season, Kyle. What has to happen for this defense for the Eagles to win? Right, give them a chance to win at least.
They got to turn the ball over. It's pretty much plain and simple. If you don't have a great defense, you need to be an opportunistic defense. I think that was one of the big things that was missing with the defense last year. Not only did they get timely sacks, they kind of stopped turning the ball over for like the second half of the season. Like I don't know if they turned the ball over like more than 3-4 times total, and they were losing the turnover battle every game. So I agree. A lot of question marks all over the defense, including the defensive line. And in the secondary is young, so they're kind of just going to have to be a little more opportunistic, and use the playmakers to their best advantage.
Yeah, and that's going to be the great thing if they can, because we saw the middle of the field get exploited by this team, by the Eagles' opponents throughout the season, and really bad as the slide began. I don't necessarily see an upgrade there at all. I see it potentially could be worse than it was last year. And then, as you mentioned, not getting enough pressure on the quarterback, creating turnovers or creating turnover environments, really made this team suffer. And then, of course, the Eagles themselves turning the football over at a huge clip last year. That needs to change as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Kyle, with all that being said, we got a football game Friday night in Sao Paulo, Brazil. The Eagles and Packers will kick it all off for the Eagles. Of course, tomorrow night, the season, or tonight, in a couple hours here, the season will actually start. The Eagles will be going with a black helmet, black pants, and white shirt, white jerseys, whatever. The Packers are going with their traditional home greens. All the talk about not being able to wear green in Brazil, whatever. Getting past that, game time temperature in Sao Paulo will be about 74 degrees. Injury report, as I mentioned, the Eagles, I have not even looked at the Packer injury report, so I'm not going to talk about that, but I mentioned some of the Eagles injury report. Rodgers is out. White is out. What is your take as we transition now to the season? What do you see happening on the fields of Paulo, Brazil, Friday night?
Oh, man, I think this is going to be one of the better games of the season, to be honest with you. Like I said, I think these two teams, by the end of the season, this game could be the deciding factor between who gets a higher seed in the playoffs or who gets in the playoffs. Not sure if it's going to be a shootout, because I think the Eagles, with the smart way for them to play it, is for them to feed Saquon. And this is another run the ball game there, Matt. I know that's music to your ears, my friend, but
Yeah,
I think they need to try and keep the ball out of the Packers' offense hands as much as they possibly can, and really test this new defensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers. So I could see this being a mid to high 20s game, but I think it's going to be a really fun one.
I do too. I think it's going to be a very fun game, very competitive. I don't necessarily think. Well, I don't know. I think it's going to be a competitive game. I think it's going to be fun. How important, though, Kyle, is it for the Eagles to win this football game in the grand scheme of things?
I think it's massively important. Like, it's going to, first of all, it's going to set the table for all the consternation, the fans, the week one. Everyone's going to take so much out of this game. If they look bad against the blitz, everybody's going to freak out and say that, it's just, same old thing. They're screwed. Season's over. If the defense gets carved up, it's going to be, wow, this defense sucks. They didn't do enough in the offseason, or Vic sucks, or, that Jordan Davis is a bust, or Nakobe's a bust, or Jalen Carter, hopefully, or Bryce Huff's a bad signing. There's going to be a lot riding on this game. And then, just like I said about the implications in the NFC, I mean, if these are going to be two of the top teams or playoff teams in the NFC, then this game in week one, I mean, this could decide a lot. So it's a huge, huge high stakes game here.
Yeah, you're right. And we're going to, of course, Philly fans, as we are, we will not overreact if they lose 48-0. And as you said, can't do anything right on the football. Yep. Now, it'll be a very quick 10 days to the Falcon game on Monday Night Football. I agree. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'll be interesting. The season will be over in week one, which, whatever. Jordan Love, when we talk about young kind of emerging quarterbacks, we spoke a little bit about Jordan Love earlier. He was very middling of the road throughout the season last year, and then something happened on Thanksgiving, and then he just rode that wave into the playoffs and into the divisional round. Right now, at this point, and again, we're using the latest evidence available to us, which is last season. Would you put Jordan Love as a better quarterback than Jalen Hurts?
I would, just because I think that Jalen Hurts a larger body of work than Jordan Love does in the NFL. I think he could become that. I'm not ready to crown him just yet after a good half of a season. And it was a pretty good half of the season, but he was pretty bad in the first half of the season. Yeah. He did come on. We'll see if he can carry that into this year. I think Jordan Love's being overrated a little bit going into this year, and I think just because of the way both teams' season ended last year, that they people are sort of going in opposite directions about both teams. But I think as of right now, I will take Hurts as my quarterback.
Yeah, I can see that. There is a little bit bigger body of work involved with Hurts than Love. But you're right. I mean, if you're asking based on the latest evidence, obviously Love is trending one way and Hurts is trending another way, and it's up to Hurts to stop that. But yeah, I'll buy that. All right, Kyle, what are your 3 keys to Eagle victory?
Back to the 3 keys, baby. It's really football season.
That's it.
Well, so I told you this just a minute ago. You got to run the ball. This is a feed Saquon Barkley game. Everyone's going to be curious about. I'm sure after the game, everyone's going to be like, they ran it too much. Jalen Hurts can't throw, running back, playing quarterback, whatever. Who cares? I don't care. Get the win. Feed Saquon Barkley. You paid him money for a reason. Let's exhaust every little bit of gas that dude has in the tank over these next 2 years. I think we got to feed him the rock, keep the ball out of the Packers' hands, sort of slow down the game a little bit so that we're not going back and forth in a shootout with, a secondary and a defense that I think has a lot of question marks. So I want them to feed Saquon Barkley. The other 2 are really things that I need to see be fixed from last year. And one that's win the turnover battle. Like we just talked about, they did not really turn the ball over at the end of last year, and they gave the ball away way too much. So if they can do that, then they can sort of keep the score close, keep Green Bay from pulling away. And I think they'll be able to come away with a win in that way. And then the other one, get off the field on third downs. I mean, that was torture last year, like torture. It was freaking 3rd and 14s. They couldn't get off the field. Same, it was happening with the Cardinals, with the Giants and Tyrod Taylor. I mean, it just got absolutely ridiculous. So they need to get off the field on third downs. And if they do all those things, I think they'll be able to squeak by.
I like that, Kyle. And you're right. Those were the getting off the field and the turnovers were probably the most frustrating based on what they did in 2022. I mean, they were creating turnovers. They had 73 sacks in 22. Last year, they had 43. They were down. I mean, that was terrible. And then you're right. The most frustrating part was not being able to get off the field. I am going to go ahead with my 3 keys to victory. My third key, Kyle, you still there? My third key is get off to a fast start. And what I mean by that is score on your opening possession, whether or not be on the kickoff or the subsequent possession after that. Once again, that was a mind-frustrating thing for me to watch that. They could not score points in the first quarter, and especially on the opening drive. I want to see them score on that opening drive and set a tone, either go up or tie. They got to put the ball in the end zone on that first touch. My number 2 key to Eagle victory is, as you mentioned it, man, play with the new toys, man. Get Saquon Barkley involved in the offense early and often. Maybe run some slants with Dotson out of that WR3 position. Break open or kind of massage the field open so then you can go ahead and hit deep with your prize wide receivers and whatnot. So play with the new toys. And my number 1 key to Eagle victory, is it probably will be all season, is friggin' Jalen Hurts, man. He needs to play like the quarterback, more like 2022 Hurts than 2023, or we're in a world of hurt and we're back into another Carson Wentz situation with a big contract to the wrong guy. So Jalen Hurts is my number 1 key to victory.
Yeah, and I think Jalen Hurts has to be part of the run the ball thing with Saquon Barkley too.
Yeah.
Like the thing that made the offense so threatening in 22 was his threat to run the ball. And then they even, they got good mileage out of Miles Sanders, DeAndre Swift. So, if Jalen Hurts is back to that 2022 running for him, that'll be huge for this team.
Absolutely. All right, Kyle. Prediction and score time and MVP time. You want me to write Jalen Hurts in right away? Is that what you want me to do? Because that's what you did last year.
No.
Oh, we're not doing that this year. Oh.
No, I'm starting with Saquon Barkley in week 1, just because I
Okay.
think they're going to feed this guy the rock. I think it's going to be a little bit back and forth. Might see some sloppiness on the defensive side of the ball for both teams, but I think the Eagles are going to play a little bit of ball control here, and I think they're going to end up coming away with a 27-24 victory.
27-24 and Saquon.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I think the Eagles lose. I think they come out and they don't do those things that we talked about. I think there's massive confusion along the offensive front. I also think the defense couldn't stop me from running down the field. I think it's a long night for the Philadelphia Eagles, and a lot of doubt and questions are brought into the mix. I like the Packers 24-10, and Jordan Love is my player of the game.
You're telling me we scored 10 points on opening night with this new offense, man? We're going to be miserable.
How many snaps has this new offense played in live action?
No, I mean, I don't know.
None.
Well, but let's be honest. Preseason doesn't matter. They played a ton of reps. They played way more reps in practice than they did last year.
I understand that, but there's a bigger. I mean, I'm not saying preseason's game speed, but it's definitely not practice speed. I get it. I see what you're saying, but there's there's an issue there, and that's going to be September's going to be a rough month. Now, whether or not that's what this team is going forward into October, November, December, I'm not saying that. But September is this team's preseason, and I know that's pretty much what it is across the NFL.
Yep.
But I'm thinking it's really going to be a preseason for them in September. I really do.
10 points would suck.
Yeah, that would. All right, Kyle, last thing, and then we're going to wrap up. And, of course, for those of you who have been watching, this has been the Birds Blast with Kyle Quinn, our weekly, the quintessential, as I said, Eagles pregame show. Me and Kyle will be cutting it up week to week, starting tonight, and then every other week to the end of the season. It's our 5th year doing this together, our 2nd here on EOP. So, you've tuned into the first episode of hopefully a great season. We always end every show with the question of the week, and it's something that I spend a lot of time researching and developing to give Kyle a brain tickler here. But I'm going to ask you, because I purposely stayed away from this, and no, it's not Howie Roseman. I'm going to say I stay away from Howie during the regular season, pretty much. But I stayed away from this topic throughout the show because I wanted to get your opinion about it unbiasedly. What do you think about the NFL in Brazil?
Look, So I know everybody's complaining about the NFL just being money grubbing, all of that. I don't know. I guess me personally, it's going to depend on how each team reacts to it. I mean, I've heard a lot of Eagles players complaining about it, which I don't love. And I heard a lot of Green Bay Packers players sounding excited about it, which I also don't love for the Eagles. So I think it's just going to be, it's going to be a matter of what what they end up making of it.
Yeah, I mean, is it a market that really? Is it a market the NFL needs to be in? I mean, we're already in Mexico. That's South America. Why do we have to go into Brazil?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. They're just trying to make more money and expand.
Yeah, I think it's more problems than what it's worth. And hopefully, as you mentioned, with all the other, and I wouldn't care if it was in Brazil, London, Mexico, losing a home game, losing that extra home game sucks. Let's just put it to you the way it is. They won't get the extra home game again until 2026. It just sucks. And, you have to wait a whole revolution to get it again. So I don't like it. I really don't. But listen, Kyle, thank you for coming back. Looking forward to another great season. Again, happy birthday. Where can the folks find you out there?
So always on 10 to 2 during the week, 94 WIP, and then on Twitter at Kyle_Quinn, WIP.
All righty, my man. We'll talk next week, brother.
All right, man. Thanks for having me, buddy.
All right. That was Kyle Quinn and the Birds Blast. Once again, I want to thank Kyle for taking some time. Is it 5th year now? Wow. Where's the time go? We started this in 2020. I remember the day. But yeah, 5th year together, 2nd year on EOP. Let me remind everybody, I have not done any of this throughout this show, and we've been on the air for over an hour, and I got to wrap it up. But everything tonight was brought to you by the Cherry Injury Law Group, the workman's compensation, motor vehicle accidents, personal injury, and criminal law. Give Dave a call at 610-565-0300 or the www.cherryinjurylaw.com for all those issues and concerns. And then when you're done with that, head over to Sherry's Tickets, because they got you covered for all the best in concert, theater, and sporting event tickets. www.sherrystickets.com. Family owned and operated since 1946. Save additional 10% when you enter promo code EOP10. And then after all that, head over down to Dolan's for a nice talk hole one. And remember, it's for Quizzo music, great times, memorabilia giveaways, 24 East Sellers Ave in Ridley Park. And then the Philly Sports Trips, who of course are in Brazil right now. And then we'll be doing great things throughout this entire season. So that's great. Now, the last thing I do want to do is I'm going to probably end every show on this segment here. I'm going to give you my week 1 picks. That's right. Old Matty B will give you his week 1. And I don't know if I'm going to reveal them on my show on Monday or wait to this show every week, but we'll figure that out as we go. But again, as I said earlier, here we go, week 1. I do this every year. I had a really bad year last year. Green Bay, Philadelphia. I got to go with the Packers here. As I told Kyle, for all the reasons, I just think there's just too many unknowns, and I just don't think they haven't played together. And so I'm not expecting much from the Eagles. I like the Packers 24-10. But backtrack tonight, Baltimore and Kansas City. KC will get off to a 1-0 start in their title defense, or their 2-time title defense, in the dawn of their dynasty. Moving on to Sunday, give me New Orleans over Carolina. I like Minnesota over the Giants. The Bengals over New England. Give me Atlanta over Pittsburgh. Texas and Indy, give me Texas. Arizona and Buffalo, give me Buffalo. Tennessee and Chicago, I like Chicago. Jacksonville, Miami. Denver and Seattle. The Raiders versus the Chargers, give me the Chargers. Dallas and Cleveland, never will ever pick the Cowboys, give me Cleveland. Washington and Tampa, give me Washington. And then on Sunday Night Football, really good one. Rams and Lions, give me the Rams. And then on Monday Night Football, just one Monday night this week, because probably we have a Friday night, Jets and the 49ers. I like the 49ers in that game. And there you have it. The first episode of the Birds Blast with Kyle Quinn of the new season. We are officially off and running. There's no stopping us now. I want to thank everybody for chiming in, joining in. I want to thank Kyle Quinn. Happy birthday to him once more. Make sure you give Kyle a listen and a follow out there. We will talk again on Monday on the Talk of Philly Sports with Matty B program. Until then, I want to say it, baby. Go Birds. We'll talk next week. See ya.